What is good reporting versus bad reporting, and what should you expect Friday? We're going to talk about that and much more next. All right, welcome back to Last Second Sports, where we are giving you our take down to the last second. And it's a little bit different tonight. My guy Sunil could not make it. So to replace him, I brought in not one, but two of my guys. Right next to me, you're going to see my guy David, aka at Backcountry Farm. That's his Twitter handle. And then right below us, we've got Marco Martinez, who is also part of the Red Zone podcast and a must follow on Twitter. I promise you, you will not be disappointed from either one of these guys. First of all, David, looking super country. I love it. Fitting for the Twitter handle. What do you got going on there, my guy?
Well, brother, it is Backcountry Fam, not Farm.
I know okay. My fault.
I am from Iowa, but I look like I do farm chores, but like I said, I can barely hammer a nail straight. So I'm in southeastern Wyoming at my uncle and aunt's. I've been out in the backcountry all summer like I usually am. I'm done. 40 nights in a tent with my family. Last night we're out. We're back to civilization, and I'm so happy to be here with you dudes.
Okay, so it should be Backcountry Farm. Let's clear that up based off of what we just heard. All right, what's up, Marco? How you doing, man?
Hey, how's it going, guys? Just blessed to be here. Thank you for having us.
Yeah, for sure, man. Well, let's jump right into it. We've got a little bit of different perspectives here. So just so you guys know, David actually lives in Minnesota area. So he's going to be out there checking out camp next week, the joint practices. I think it's going to be a ton of fun. Look forward to hearing what you have to say. Marco, you were at a couple of the practices. And so I think that we're going to have some good perspective on tonight. But one of the things I wanted to talk about first, and I knew this was going to happen. Unfortunately, I don't go live on Monday, so I couldn't talk about it then. But when Trey had a bad practice on Sunday and then they had an off day, we knew that there was going to be a lot of people jumping off the bandwagon and there would be a lot of different reports flowing. Some, over the top, whatever. And so my question is just simply this. We don't have to talk about anybody specifically. And David, I'll start with you. But when it comes to good reporting and bad reporting, we can stick specifically to training camp. There's a lot of people that do it and they do it very differently. But when it comes to good reporting and bad reporting, like, what do you like to see from the people that are reporting, and who do you usually, without giving names, like who do you usually gravitate to based off their reporting style? What do you look for?
It's funny. I think that to speak about the good reporting or bad reporting, I think honestly, Lions, you're 99. I mean, all these guys that are out there, it's really impressive, by the way. And this is a new in this business, is that how many people are in the game, like going there and giving honest takes, like just being honest with what you see and then going beyond just like reporting, here's the box score, of what we see, because we know there's context with that. But I think it's important to say, hey, it's okay to also report that raw data. But I think, from being at the first week of camp last year, one of the things that I just tried to do was, say like, hey, this is who's looking the most impressive and why. And we know it's against air, or it's something, they put the pads on and it's a little bit different world, but fans just want to see what you've actually seen and just kind of report. And it's going to be, you try to be objective, but you're going to give your interpretation of it. And I think that once you see other people's reports and what gets corroborated, that's where I think that you glean kind of almost like a composite report, so to speak. As far as like, I think that like, who I've gravitated to, I really think that, Marco's been on the beat with Rohan. I mean, I've like last year, and I mean, obviously Marco's here, but I always trust, I mean, it's just the truth. I trust Marco. I trust what those guys are doing. I do think that, by and large, the beat's been pretty solid. I think that, Niners Nation guys have been there, like KP and Jordan. I thought have been doing a damn good job of that as well. And so I think there's a lot. And like I said earlier, there's a flavor for everybody, right? Like, like people do They pick and choose maybe what works for them. And I just suggest go look at everybody's reports, see what's kind of like what is being corroborated multiple times. And typically, I think that's where you're going to get the closest approximation to the truth.
Absolutely. And Marco, yeah, you were at camp, and I did. I gave a shout out to Rohan. This is his first year really doing it. I thought it was a breath of fresh air the way that he delivered news. Not only, I think a lot of people do a really good job of delivering it either in a full writing context or on a YouTube channel, and some people struggle to do it through tweets and maybe vice versa, but I think he just does a fantastic job all the way around. So for it being his first year, I know he's a friend of all of ours, but I just want to throw that out again. Rohan has been doing a fantastic job. Now, Marco, I know you spent a couple of days at camp with him. So when you're trying to, and let's be clear, like none of us here are reporters or journalists, right? Not in the true sense, anyways. And so with that being said, like what do you look for, Marco? And then what do you try to do when you go to camp?
So what I look for in reporting, right, is I want someone to be able to paint the picture where I can see the narrative going in my head, right? And I think Rohan does a fabulous job because not only does he give like these stats and this picture, he gives all the context of what's going on throughout the entire practice, right? So he's not only is he putting out there like, oh, Trey Lance just completed a pass to Deebo Samuel. He's explaining what Deebo Samuel was doing. He's explaining who's on offense. So, for example, if Mike McGlinchey and Trent Williams aren't there, he's letting everyone know, by the way, these guys aren't there, but this is what Trent's doing. When they are there, he reports what they're doing. When I go, what I try doing is I try focusing mainly on what's going on. So if it's a padded practice, then I'll report a little bit differently. If it's not padded, if certain players are there, like on Sunday when everyone was there was no Mike, there was no Kittle, there was no Trent Williams, no Mosley or Bosa. So it was kind of hard to report in a way because your offensive line's not there. And the most important players, in my opinion, on that O-line are Mike McGlinchey and Trent Williams because they make Trey Lance's life a lot easier. And it's always going to be obvious when you have the best left tackle in the game that he makes the quarterback's life easier. Kind of hard to put that through people's head, though, sometimes. So for me, what I look for and what I try to do is I try to explain everything. I don't want to go out and I don't want to be biased on things. So, for example, on one of the throws that Trey Lance had on Sunday, he threw an interception to Fred Warner, and everyone's like, "Oh, he's terrible. He went 4 for 12. He looks absolutely terrible." Blah blah blah. Well, first of all, that's a sack. Some people are going to count that as an interception. In my opinion, I don't count that as an interception because he was sacked. Charles Omenihu had sacked him, and then like 2 seconds later, he throws the ball. So realistically, what are we looking at? And the thing is when you're at training camp, everyone looks at everything differently. People could look at drops differently. People could look at whether a player was open differently. We all got to remember that when we're looking at the game from stands, you can't really see the whole picture. And that's why when we usually talk, we like to go all 22 with everything because when you have the all 22, you're able to see the entire field. And that's the biggest thing with camp. I like to let people know there's no all 22. And from my angle, this is what I'm able to see. I can't see the entirety of every single play. You can't watch the coverage. You can't watch the O-line. And you can't watch what the quarterback is doing all in one play. You just don't have enough eyes to do so. So when you're reporting stuff, and this goes for every reporter, not just me, every reporter can't watch every little bit of every play. So we're losing a lot of context in every play, no matter what. So the fact that some of these guys could put a pretty good narrative about each play together just tells you on what they're able to do. And I respect some of the work that Rohan's been putting out there because when I'm reading, I'm like, okay, he's explaining a very, very good picture for everyone to watch on every play.
Absolutely. And there's so much that goes into it. And you're right. We don't get to look at it. I don't know how many times I've watched a game on a Sunday and thought one thing. And then when I went back and watched the All-22, I'm like, oh, that's not how that went down at all. Like when I saw it live, I thought this, but once I watched it now, that's not what happened. It was actually this. And I think that happens a lot with players. You know, we judge players based off of one thing that we see throughout a game, and we're not watching them play in and play out. But when you go back and you do have a chance to watch them, your perspective sometimes can completely change. I look at Ambry Thomas was a great example of that last year. I felt like when people were saying, oh, he's struggling, he's getting mossed, whatever, if you watched him down in and down out, he actually did a pretty good job. It was a play or two that he gets highlighted and all of a sudden you think he's a bad player. And that wasn't necessarily the case. So I don't know. I think this is an interesting topic because everybody does it a little bit differently. Kudos to everybody that does do this. And there's a comment here by Sue that says, hey, listen, I'm looking forward to your reporting. And this is where I think a lot of people get confused. And hopefully I can clear that up now. I am not a journalist and I don't even pretend that I'm reporting any news, right? I opine, and that's the lane that I want to be in. I want to be able to give my opinion without feeling guilty that I know these guys or I have to do the organization justice by holding up a certain opinion about these guys. For me, I want to give what I'm really feeling in the moment. And so like right now, when I hear all these things about Trey Lance, for example, and we'll probably talk more about him here shortly, I'm giving an opinion based off of what I'm hearing other people saying, but more so what I'm seeing. So when a video comes out, people are looking at certain things and saying, oh, he went 4 for 12 today. But when I watch the video, I'm going, well, hold on. He's going through his progressions. That's a positive. The ball's coming out quickly. That's a positive. There's not a lot of wobble to it. That's a positive. And those are the things that I'm looking at. Now, when I actually see him play, and then I have the all 22, I promise you, I will be honest in how I'm feeling about the situation. I will not pull any punches. But for right now, we are going strictly off training camp, and I am not there. So I'm not going to act as if I am, and I'm not going to freak out over training camp. And I think that that's a great segue to the next topic. How telling is camp? And so, David, you said you spent some time there last year. Marco, you've been there this year. How much does camp really mean in the grand scheme of things? David, I'll let you start with that one.
Here's an example. I think you look at it. You look at it on either side of the coin here. And maybe you had another kind of a question that was subsidiary to that, which was, are there other positions that you might be able to glean more from the bleachers or from the sidelines and you're not getting from all 22 in camp? Here's an example. Last year at training camp, first week, I think Marco, I know, I won't speak, but I think you could corroborate this. Elijah Mitchell, okay, 6th round running back. All through my notes the first 4 days, it just kept the same thing. The same thing kept coming up that he was the most explosive. I thought he was the most explosive player on the field. He looked like the best running back. And I wrote in my camp report that first week, I said, do not be surprised when Elijah Mitchell poaches, if not displaces Trey Sermon based on what we've seen. Now you go back and look at that and it's easy to say, oh, look, I got this right. There's all kinds of things that you could say where you might have missed an evaluation. But I guess the moral of that is, at least maybe at running back or for Elijah Mitchell, that bore out and that translated to the regular season. And so I think there are a lot of players that can show out when you're looking at traits. And people could say, like you were saying before, oh, they're only going up against this, or Travarius Ward and E-Man were out. Look at what players are developing or showing consistently. And usually those traits are going to manifest throughout. And I think that did for Mitchell. So the other flip side, though, of that is that you look at guys that make those highlight plays in camp. That's what shows up on the YouTube highlights for the team. That's what gets shared around Twitter. I mean, I'm guilty about getting excited and hyped about things like that too, right? For any position, we like to boil that a player's worth down to like this, like really exciting play. And it's a double-edged sword because I think at quarterback, you make that gross interception and that just like leaves a sour taste in your mouth. But if you're a corner and make this pick 6, it's awesome. But if you got burned twice and you see all those Ayuk mossing people, nobody's talking about those other guys. It's just certain positions that get elevated for that level of critique and criticism. So I think that, as Marco said before, you paint an honest picture. And that's the best you can do. The last thing I will say is this. In baseball, if Fernando Tatis goes 0 for 50 with 30 strikeouts, people will be like, okay, this kind of sucks, but we're not really worried about it. I think football and training camp gets more, just gets like dissected more than any other sports training camp. And I think that just shows you how much people crave football when they haven't had it for months.
Yeah, absolutely. And Marco, I'll ask you the same question. I mean, and just to follow up on something David said, you were talking specifically about Elijah Mitchell. Elijah Mitchell is a great example because he was a guy that wasn't even like the next man up. He was like fourth man up last year. Yet when it came to week one, he's the one that took all the carries once Mostert went down, right? And so we think we have it all figured out by hearing, but you were there and you're like, well, hold on a second. I think this might be the best guy. And so there is some context to that. So Marco, same thing for you. Like, how much does training camp really mean in the grand scheme of things? Like, should we, Trey Lance is staying on everybody's mind. Like, should we be worried based off of things that we hear? Should we get super excited, super high, super low? Like, just what are your thoughts overall?
I think people should stay calm about everything in terms of training camp, right? Like, you're going to get some great days from every player at one point during a training camp. But realistically, what's going to end up happening is they're going to have to play with actual pads tackling, right? This isn't live practice. Like, they're not taking it to the ground. I mean, some plays during run plays, they take it to the ground. I did see a comment that they said Trey Sermon should be traded or cut. Trey Sermon looks super explosive right now, and he looks very decisive. He looks much, much better than last year. That's one thing I would put out there. Elijah Mitchell, he added some weight, and you can still see his explosiveness. But going about on how telling is training camp, there's one thing I'm gonna tell about training camp, right? So I'm gonna talk about Trey Lance on Sunday, because people see the 4 for 12 and he looked bad. Well, on my notes, I was going through my notes again just to double check on how many drops and how many coverages I have that were very tight. So I had 3 very tight coverages that Trey Lance threw into, where it's like a play that, okay, well, the DB is just locked up. So I had 3 of those. So, okay, where do you want Trey Lance to put it? Because the coverage was great. 2, there was a drop by Ray McLeod that I considered a drop. I thought Trey Lance put it on the money. I would love to see the all 22 version of that. One play that some people that I was talking in the stands with considered a drop by Brandon Ayuk. And then there was a one where Charvarius Ward almost intercepts, but what I had saw from the play was Tyler Kroft ran the damn wrong route. They're trying to run a natural pick route. Him and the corner end up running into, it was a linebacker. They end up running into Brandon Ayuk. Brandon Ayuk ends up spinning in the air, trying to navigate through them, and Charvarius Ward puts his hands on the ball. So that's what practice is all about, right? And the thing is, the reason why you can't put too much stock into camp, I just said Tyler Kroft running a route with the ones. In a key situation, it was 3rd down and 3, right? When in the hell will Tyler Kroft be running a 3rd down and 3 pattern with Brandon Ayuk to get one of those guys open? It's going to be George Kittle and Brandon Ayuk, Deebo Samuel. You're going to have your best players on the damn freaking field, where you're not going to have Mike McGlinchey, Colton McKivitz, and Justin School on the field. So like, you can't put too much stock into training camp, even when they have great practices. You can't. It's realistically you can't. Because if we look at some of the guys, right? One year Brian Hoyer looked like a freaking legend in camp.
Yeah, he did.
So are we going to put so much stock into camp where it makes these players who have great we also had what was his name back in the day? His last name was Rush. No, we had Rush, defensive end. Everyone thought was going to go bananas because he had a great preseason and a great camp. Can't think of his name, but his last name was Rush. Everyone was like, "Oh my God, 49ers found themselves an edge rusher." Dude, he sucked. He realistically he sucked ass. Like, let's be honest now.
Guy from Michigan State.
Yeah, guy from Michigan State. I don't know what his first name was, but Cooper. I don't put too much. Cooper Rush, I think it might be, and that might be a quarterback for Dallas Cowboys. But it sounds good.
Marcus, I can't remember.
But I don't put too much stock into how talent camp is, only because a lot of these times these players are working out the playbook. Half the guys don't even know the playbook. They're still learning it. By the end of camp, that's when about time they finally figure it out. Too much time. I see a lot of wrong routes, miscommunication with the quarterback receiver. This is what camp is all about, is ironing out the wrinkles. And everyone's like, well, how come we don't see George Kittle getting 8 receptions in camp? Why don't we see Brandon Ayuk going crazy or Deebo Samuel going crazy? He's one of the best receivers in all of NFL. Well, because they don't have a chemistry yet. So for me, that's stuff I want to put out there. There was wrong routes ran. There was very tight coverage. We also forget, and this was something that I thought was very interesting, because after practice, me and a couple of the guys were talking, And we're talking about how it was very interesting because this is how telling camp is, right? 49er fans started booing Fred Warner after he intercepted Trey Lance. Why the hell are we booing a player for getting an interception, even though it was after the he got sacked? The 49ers fans, and I think all fans in general, want to see offenses annihilate defense in camp, and that's not going to happen because guess what? The defense gets paid to play football too. They're not the only one. The offense isn't the only one who gets paid, and that's how telling camp actually is.
Can we just stop and rewind exactly what he just like is almost and granted, it's okay to have honest critiques. It's okay to say, yeah, we'd like to see improvement from player X or on the offensive or defensive side of the ball. But I think what Marco said really taps into a psyche of fans, and I'm guilty of this as well, right? You're watching, you want to see the shiny toy do well. You get Trey Lance, you want Trey Lance to just be lighting up. But then if Trey Lance is consistently going 20 for 20, that means your defense has got a lot of problems as well. And so obviously in the game, if we do believe that the Niners have a top 5 defense, then we better hope that they're making plays, regardless of who's throwing the ball. And I think on the flip side of that, people say, well, now you're being a stand for. No, I still think it's possible to find the nuance like that Marco said about, okay, you got the routes, you got the drops, you got the whatever, but you also have the errors. You'd like to see him go back. It's practice. And you're trying to iron these things out in the first couple of weeks.
Yeah, absolutely. And, I've been trying to retweet as much as I can from other training camp reports. Justin Fields hasn't looked good. Mac Jones isn't looking good. Zach Wilson's had his issues. Today, I heard that Russell Wilson has looked terrible. How many people are worried about Russell Wilson? Do we really think that Russell Wilson's going to be horrible when the season starts? Probably not. Probably not many of us. So my point of that is, and I'm not even saying anything like, oh, these guys are terrible, look at them. It's just like, this is happening almost everywhere. It's okay. There's no reason to panic. We'll see when the games start. We will see. I'm very curious to see how these joint practices go. I'm glad that you're going to be there, David. And, as much as I'm interested in training camp, and I certainly am, Marco, that I called you after, I think it was your second day there. I'm like, all right, tell me, give me the real deal. How good is Trey? What are you seeing? At the same time, to your point, players are working on things. Some don't know the full playbook. We also don't know what is being told to them. What is being told to Trey before a play? Are you supposed to work on something specific? Are you supposed to throw it to a specific spot to work on that and get this guy work? We don't know. We don't know any of those things. So there's a lot. Even when somebody tries to provide a ton of context, there's still a lack of context regardless, because there are certain things that we just do not know. And so chill, it'll be fine. Everybody on the team is going to be fine. The defense is really good. All of that. Go ahead, Marco.
So before everyone starts talking about my Spencer Burford comment in the comments, right? So I said eventually. I didn't say he's going to be a Pro Bowler this year. I said eventually he will be a Pro Bowler. Like before people start assuming that I said, like not assuming, but putting it out there that I said he's going to be a Pro Bowler this year. I said he's eventually going to be a Pro Bowler. He has all the Pro Bowl traits. So when he doesn't become a Pro Bowler this year, because it's very rare that we have rookies become Pro Bowlers, don't try to hit me on the timeline saying I was wrong, because within the next 4 years, he will be a Pro Bowler, and you can mark my words.
Well, I will say this. Here's my example of the corroborating. And it sounds like it's like I always say as a teacher, there's no such thing as stealing and coaching or teaching. Like you borrow, right? You judiciously decide about what to implement and how to implement. And I will say this. As a history teacher, I always tell the kids, like, corroboration is the number one thing in context, right? If I'm looking at all these reports, one name that I keep seeing that keeps rising to the top is Spencer Burford. I've seen from many reports from people that I trust, including Marco here, that he's been possibly the most impressive rookie. I know KP had a great article. KP had a great article about that today too. I know he and Marco are not the only ones. That is incredibly encouraging. And I keep forgetting that he was in the 4th round. Now that's not day 1, but right, or day 2 either. But he was taken above Zakel, and to have him come in, especially with Jalen Moore kind of having this strain or whatever is going on, maybe being on PUP a little bit. That's big news for that offensive line.
Yeah, listen, don't worry. I will definitely hit up Marco and let him know that you said year 1. I remember on this show, and then I'll doctor this whole thing too.
Marco definitely said he was going to be a Pro Bowler this year.
Yeah, I heard it too. I'll just play this portion actually.
It's crazy though, because like not gonna lie, the first player that stood out to me out of all players at camp when I was watching them, it wasn't like the day one. Everyone was practicing. 100% was Spencer Burford. 100%. Everything that he was doing, I was like, whoa. You don't see players win every one-on-one rep. You don't see players freaking mauling defensive linemen in the run game. You don't see them stonewalling them in pass protection. I was like shook. His feet, his athleticism, his strength, his size. I was like, whoa. Like, honestly, I will not be shocked if Spencer Burford's our starting right guard. And let's say if Mike McGlinchey was to get more money on the open market than the 49ers could offer him or give him, I would not be shocked to see Spencer Burford go to right tackle. That's how good he is.
Yeah, I think that's high praise. And he was a tackle in college, right? It would be natural for him to go to that position. And he's actually built like a tackle. So the fact that he's able to anchor the way that he does inside, extremely impressive. The kid is probably going to be really, really good. And you're right, David. That's one thing that we can do is just try to take as much information as possible from everybody and then come up with a story based off of what we're hearing the most. And that is one thing that we are certainly hearing a lot of. So it's exciting. It's good. All right, let's talk about an actual game because guess what? They play Friday. 49ers are playing against the Packers. Now, it is preseason, so there won't be a lot of the starters, but we did hear from Shanahan today. He said that there will be starters playing this Friday. He expects Trey Lance gets some run. And then again in week 3. Week 2 makes sense for him not to play as much because they're going to have those joint practices. That's pretty normal. So, Marco, I'm actually going to have you start with this one. Trey Lance, if you are the head coach, how much do you think Trey Lance should play on Friday?
Depending on who's playing, am I going to have my starting tackles out there? If I'm not, then I'm letting him go two series at most. I'm not putting my prize draft pick or my prize quarterback out there to be hit. Realistically, he's going to be hit if Justin School and Colton McKivitz are out there blocking for him at tackle. Especially if the Packers send a couple of their ones out there or even their twos. Like Justin School can't block anyone. It's very bad. So it all depends on who's starting with them, whether they're having the entire interior start for a couple series or are they having all the receivers start for a couple series. Realistically, I would like to see him go for half a quarter. But again, I don't want to see him getting thrown out there with Justin School and Colton McKivitz because those guys are brutal to watch, and I'm not trying to have Trey Lance get hit. The reason why I say half a quarter is because I think the young quarterback needs all the reps he can get against any other team. So that's why I'm very excited for him to get all these reps against the Minnesota Vikings. He won't play. I don't think he'll play week 2 in the preseason. So I think all the starters will sit week 2. I think most of them will play week 1, and then week 3, most of them should play week 3 again because they have 3 games in 12 days. So I think what Kyle's going to do is Friday they'll play. They'll do their practice where they could control a controlled environment with all these players. And then that next preseason game, the third one, they'll have it.
Yeah, absolutely. TC 49ers says 1 13-minute drive. That might not happen. I mean, based off today, they did move the ball period and he just took it for 65 and that was that. So we'll see how it plays out. But David, what about you? Do you have any different thoughts on how much not only he, but the starters should play if you were a coach, what you would do?
I mean, this is a controversial take. I'm not trying to be a hot take here. I actually wouldn't care if any of the starters played at all. And I really don't. Kyle Shanahan's been on record ad nauseum for years that he values practice over preseason. And most coaches, I think, would agree with that. The reps that you're going to get are so small. They're so brief. And most of these coaches are doing these vanilla installs. And like, it's not, I get the idea of the live reps. I fall into that trap myself where I think, oh my God, if he doesn't play a whole half of football, how the hell is he going to be ready for the regular? They practice against professional football players every day. And the 49ers practice against some damn good ones. And so this isn't, you're not the Houston Texans. Okay. And no knock on Houston, but really, well, I honestly,
Houston sucks. Just say that. Sure.
I just honestly don't. I'm with people say, well, you can't always be afraid of getting injured. You could get injured walking out the front door. Yeah, you could. But the idea is that there's 17 game season. And people say, I have a firm belief that 2 series against Green Bay and Santa Clara on Friday is going to have almost zero bearing on what ends up transpiring in the regular season. Those day-to-day practices are going to be so much more valuable. And if, as Marco said, if those starters aren't in, I would, if Trent Williams isn't playing, I'll just go down to one play. If Trent Williams is not playing, I would rather not see Trey Lance back there. And I'm not saying he's more important than other players. Like, his health is not more important than other people as human beings, but he's the starting quarterback. And I think fans are just so excited to see it that they'd be disappointed if they don't go. I know I just gave a couple tickets. This dude is a nice guy. I'm sure he wants to go see. I would want to go see Trey Lance throw the ball if I was in Santa Clara. But yeah, I hope, honestly, I know in Minnesota, those practices, just like they did with the Chargers last year, way more valuable than the game. And then week 3, whatever, who cares? If he sat the starters the whole year, the whole preseason, I wouldn't care.
Yeah, absolutely. And I agree with you. I think that's a great way to look at it. If Trent Williams doesn't play, I don't want Trey to play. Selfishly, I do. I want to see 2 series out of him. I would love to see that. I do think there is some value from it, just facing another defense, but I do think probably this next week's worth of practice is going to bring way more value than what this preseason game is going to bring for Trey Lance. But being that the fan base is so excited, I would love to see it. Now, what I don't want to see is him to come out and go, I don't know, 3 for 8, something like that. And then, oh gosh, we'll never hear the end of it because here we go. Everybody's now seen whatever. So it'll be interesting to see how much he plays, how he plays, all of that. I think this is a great question here by Eric. He says, hey, here's an interesting question. Playing the 49ers defense in practice will make Trey Lance better. But do you guys think playing Trey Lance in practice will make the defense better?
Absolutely.
Go ahead. Yeah.
I'll take this one real quick. Okay. First, I think it absolutely makes his defense better because what he does is he's pushing the ball downfield. So one thing I did notice, he is attacking deep. Even though they're incomplete, you can see the defense starting to bow a little sooner. It's like, okay. And then next thing you know, he has a crossing route over the middle. Deebo Samuel on a big route. Or Brandon Ayuk crossing over the middle on a big 25-yard catch with yards after the run. So to me, it's like, okay, he's actually making these DBs work, even though these DBs are making him work. So yes, he is also making the defense better because then hit the addition of his legs, right? We play a lot of mobile quarterbacks. What did he do today? 65-yard touchdown run on a zone read. It forces the defense to have to get reps against that every day. And then I'd also say when he's moving in the pocket and he's scrambling, he's not looking to run. He's looking to throw the ball. And a lot of quarterbacks in this league do that. So I would say absolutely he's making this defense better. Even though he's not putting up the stats that we're looking for, he's absolutely making that defense better.
Well, if I want
sure.
to,
Go ahead, David.
I've been in the backcountry with my fam for months. That's where the handle comes from, people. I live in the mountains in the summer. You tell me Trey Lance had a 65-yard zone read rushing touchdown?
Today he did. Untouched.
I think that answers the question, right? Kyle had talked about 11 on 11. Okay. And we've also seen Trey sometimes be okay. I'm not saying Trey Lance is Patrick Mahomes. Here's where Patrick Mahomes, people think that they see the gunslinger and they see the sidearm, and they see the no look. Patrick Mahomes is actually one of takes the least amount of risks amongst NFL quarterbacks. People think that he's always like Brett Favre in it. Like he's just because they both have strong, he actually is pretty judicious. And Trey Lance has been that way. And I actually think it's encouraging that in this camp, you're really seeing, I think Kyle say, hey man, air it out, brother. Like go out and take those chances. This is where you got to get those reps to kind of see what works, to iron out the kinks. And so, but then when you add that run game, I think for some reason, I don't know why, and maybe this is just my bias, I feel like his running threat is being kind of neglected or on the back. Everybody wants to talk about the deep ball. Everybody wants to talk about his arm. And I also saw somebody say that he wasn't fast. Like he runs, but he's just big. I don't know where that narrative came from.
He's fast. He's
fast
fast
as hell.
I've seen it. He's fast.
think his GPS was at 21.54.
Yeah, yeah.
Can we just the man is a freak. And I think what Trent Williams had said the other day, put his name on it, was basically saying this dude is, if there's a generational talent as far as on paper with what I have seen, his metrics and what I've seen in practice, if he fulfills his potential, he can be that. So very much so. I want to face Trey Lance in practice if I'm a defensive coordinator. I want to face a guy that's going to, like Marco said, be mobile, but also be a guy that's going to stretch the field and make my defenders be to not get lost in coverage, to not get their eyes stuck. I want to see that. So I think it's the best of both worlds. And what I'm looking forward to going down to being in Minneapolis next week is how that translates, what looks different when they're not going against each other. What benefit, what little things that each other know about each other start to kind of maybe work on either side of the ball's favor. And hopefully you're seeing more pluses on either side of the ball for the Niners than minuses.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. And going back to the game, I actually would prefer that no starting players on defense play at all. I don't want to see any of the defense play. I don't care, right? If I'm going to see either side play, I'd rather it be the offense, and a series or two is great. I'm the defense, just stay healthy. That's what we need from you, because you guys are clearly going to be great. Eric, I think this is a great question. I think we got our answer, though, from Fred Warner last year, because Fred Warner talked about this very thing, and that how he had approached Trey and said, hey, listen, you got to take chances. You're being too perfect in practice. And yes, your numbers look good, you're efficient, all those things, but we're not getting the looks that we need. And it was actually hurting them at times. He said they would go out to games and they wouldn't know how to play the ball properly because they weren't getting those real reps against the scout team. And so once Trey started to take chances, not only did it make them better, but it made him better. And so, yeah, I think the answer is unequivocally 100% yes, absolutely. And that question was kind of answered last year. Go ahead, Marco.
So to tack on to what you just said, right? So I go to training camp with my fiance. She doesn't know much football. She understands the game, understands stuff. I try to explain stuff to her, coverages and stuff like that. It goes in one ear, right out the other. Okay. So you guys this is going to be a story. So I'm talking to her about Trey Lance, because we both went to camp last year and this year. So she understands for the most part what defenses are doing and what the quarterback is obviously trying to accomplish, right? So I asked her, I was like, babe, what did you see different from Trey Lance last year to this year? And her answer obviously had me start thinking, wow, are you really watching training camp that well? So she goes, first thing I did notice was last year, it looked like he was being very careful when he would do things, and it looked like he was actually competing for a job. This year, it looks like he's going careless because he knows what he could do, and that's what he's trying to accomplish. And I was like, oh, so you're telling me, and I looked at her, oh, so you're telling me it looks like he's trying to do things that he can't do to see if he could do it? And she was like, yeah, pretty much. I was like, okay, sums it up. That's how you know what Trey Lance is doing. Looks like he's trying to see, okay, I know my defense is great. What can I do against a great defense that I shouldn't do in a real game situation? And that's why I was like, that makes sense for me. I loved her for it, because she knows she doesn't care for football. She started watching football for me, and for her to give me that analysis, I was like, that's what I was kind of not expecting, but what I was kind of thinking in my head.
And I think that's great to hear too, by the way. And you told me that on the phone. So second time I'm hearing the story, but I'm glad that you shared it here, because I think that's important. Go ahead, David.
I want to piggyback on, and I think that it's like this dueling narratives about iron sharpens iron and competition breeds, and I think it's very true. And I think it could still be very true for quarterback. I also think that at quarterback, you more than any other position are at a position that you can get in your head. And that there's this idea that, if you have job security, that you're just going to loaf. Oh, he got his contract, so he's not going to care. Oh, no. When you are shown that you are the guy, I don't care what work sector, okay? When you are shown unequivocally, we believe in you, that helps you do your job better than always feeling like you're trying to climb up that ladder, or you're looking over your shoulder. Now, for some people, they might have different reactions. I get that. I think at quarterback, though, where you need to not be in your head, when you say, hey, It's your show. You don't have to worry about, you can make, Kyle talked about it at the press conference. We are prepared for mistakes like we would be with anybody. We're riding with you. We believe in you. We invested in you. Go do your thing. Like you said, iron out these kinks, see what works, like Marco like said, right? And I think that's really showing. And that confidence matters, man. And that quarterback confidence is outside of cornerback is cornerback and quarterback to me. I think confidence is the name of the game. And if you lose that, you're out.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. And you're right. I mean, Trey Lance certainly comes across like a person that cares. And if you care a lot about your job and somebody does believe in you, then you're out to try to prove them right. Right. Like you feel like you owe them something. And so you're not only doing it for yourself, but you're doing it to prove that person right. And I think that that's probably exactly where Trey Lance is at. Let me read the super chat real quick and then we'll get into the next topic. Flav says, "What's up, Jess? I recently went to see Trey throw in person. If you listen closely, you can hear a quack after almost all of them." Flav is a big Jimmy G supporter, but Flav, even for you, my man, this is a top level troll job. Appreciate the donation. Let me show you some love right back. All right. It just froze on me, so I don't know what's going on.
That's cool.
Here.
I'll run your show for you. No worries.
Yeah, I'm gonna jump out real quick and then jump back in so you guys can talk real quick. It just froze on me. So
one thing I did notice, David, the fact that the comment is talking about a quack, you can hear on some throws where he's putting heat on it, you can hear it hit the receiver's hands. So like I think it's funny that he did say that. I did see a couple comments in the comment section. I don't know if I could go up. Obviously, I can't put them in here, but there's one that's saying the over or under on 7 interceptions for the secondary this season. What do you think the secondary is going to get, over or under? And if that's the bet line, would you pound the over or would you pound the under?
Oh, the secondary?
Yeah, so the question says, I can't add it to here because obviously I'm not a host, but the question goes over or under 7.5 interceptions for the secondary this season. Would you pound the over or under?
For the whole season?
Yeah, for the season.
I'm going to pound the over. I know that it seems like that might be because the Niners have historically not been, the takeaways, have been sometimes lacking there. I just think the addition of Charvarius Ward this year, he's an opportunistic guy. I think he's looked another guy that seems, again, I haven't been at training camp, so I'm just pouring over all these guys that I trust. Another name that just keeps coming up when he's on the field. He's dynamite. He is a huge upgrade. E-Man's look great. He strained his hamstring. I'm hoping he's okay. He says he's going to be back next week, but hamstrings are really tricky. I think but Jimmy Ward has been looking great. I know Fred doesn't factor into the secondary equation there for interceptions, but I think that I'll go the over. I say hammer the over. I'll go the over. I think that happens this year. And I think that we're not going to see too many dropped interceptions in center field.
Oh, what was the question? Over on
one of the questions in the chat was over or under on 7.5 interceptions from the secondary on the season. I'm gonna go ahead and pound the over by a lot because from what I've seen, the secondary is not only are they playing better, the communication on the back end is much better. We have Charvarius Ward who's willing to jump passes and jump routes. Emmanuel Mosley is pretty sticky in coverage, and I don't think Emmanuel Mosley will get his hands on too many balls, but I do believe the 49ers, their defense are going to throw out there. It's going to allow Hufanga and Jimmy Ward to play a little freer, and it's going to allow them to be a little bit riskier. So you might see one game where one of them jumps a pass and they get beat over the top, but that's going to be fine because they're eventually going to get interception one of those games doing so. And I'm a firm believer. I'd rather have more interceptions than, like a lot of people talk about Trevon Diggs, right? 10 interceptions, 789 yards or 900 yards, whatever the case may be. I'm fine with it because he got 10 interceptions. Now, how can he replicate that season? Probably not. So you better give up way less yards because 10 interceptions to me is pretty solid, even though it's 900 yards. To me, I'll take that any day of the year. Now, get those numbers down because his interceptions are gonna go down as well. So,
and that's another question too. We talked about how turnovers can be outliers, sacks can be sometimes outliers as far as with pressures and things like that. I do think though there is this idea that yes, you're going to see regression when you have 10 interceptions. There's a likelihood that the Vegas money is he's not going to replicate that. And given that being said, I still think it's not necessarily fair to completely devalue turnovers as if those don't matter. And I think that if you see that consistently over a player's career, you're really seeing it's pretty odd that you can just be that lucky year after year after year to kind of have that type of production. And then once, though, those guys, those corners get that level of respect that you're not throwing to their side of the field like you were having with Richard Sherman. That's why Akello Witherspoon was, he's kind of, Akello, but he was also, you had Richard on the other side, and that's a whole other conversation. But yeah, I would pound the over. I'm not going to say how far over, but if all I have to do is get 8, I'm good.
Yeah, I am as well. And I have a theory. I'll run this by you guys. I actually think third downs, there's going to be a lot of interceptions because last year, if you remember, the 49ers did a great job on first and second down, and then they continually got beat on third and long, and it really started to show up against Tennessee. And then both the final 2 Rams games, it just eventually was too much to overcome. And a lot of that was because they were playing soft coverage, right? And hoping that the defensive line could get home. Well, this year, you're going to have the defensive line still a threat to get home, but I think they're going to play a lot of press man, even in third down and long situations, which is going to force a quarterback to make a quick decision and throw into tight coverage. And I think that you're going to see a lot of like tip picks and those types of things. I think third down this year could be a real serious down for a lot of turnovers from that 49ers secondary. And that's what I'm looking for.
And that's go ahead, Marco.
Go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say, like, I keep forgetting that the over-under was a secondary specifically. We are forgetting that we've got linebackers that can cover a lot of ground, and they're going to get fed too in that regard. But I think that, ideally, if this offense if this run game is as improved as I think people that I trust are seeing, and that if quarterback play is, I think Grant was talking about that, even if a quarterback play is net 0, right? And the defense has improved with Charvarius Ward and some other additions. That means on paper, mathematically, probability is you're going to have more instances throughout a 17-game season where your opponent is potentially and hopefully playing from behind. So I'm not saying that it's like an 17-0, blowouts every time. I'm just saying that I think that would lead me to be more confident in that bet.
They might get 3 in week 1, like, to be real. And this is not a knock on Justin Fields, but he's not working with a whole lot there. And they're probably going to be down early, and they're going to have to force some things. And I think that it could get ugly for Fields. So we'll see how that goes. But they might get a real good jump on this in week 1 and week 2, playing the Bears and the Seahawks. They might have 5 2 weeks in. So we'll see how this goes. What about Bosa over under 15.5 sacks? He had 15 last year. I actually have given a number that I think he's going to have 17 this year. So that's the number I'm going with. So I'm going to take the over personally.
If I'm a betting man, is that the Vegas line, or is that just your?
I don't know. I think it's just somebody that threw it out. Yeah, I said 17. Yeah, it's a good number.
I think he's fully capable of being a guy that always threatens the sack record every year. So I mean, remember they're playing 17 games now, and so. True. If Bosa's healthy, I think that, he has one big game like an Aldon Smith. I remember, 2011, my God, or 2012. Aldon Smith had that, 4 sacks against the Bears. Things like that happen. So if he has one of those games where he just goes nuts, then 15.5 seems almost conservative. I'm going to say under, maybe not too far under. I think if 14-15 is still a hell of a year. That doesn't mean that he's not disrupting the game without getting the sacks. And I think that there's other help there along the defensive line. I think that D'Amico Ryans is getting much more creative and not just relying on Nick Bosa or bust. And I think that I don't feel comfortable with that bet, but I think that I think a 14 or 15 sack season with making people chip him nonstop and making people double team him is fine by me.
A lot of half sacks and cleanup duty is kind of what you're saying.
Yeah.
I'm going to go over. I wouldn't be shocked if he has like in the 17 to 20 range because he's finally going to get cover sacks, right? Like this defensive back group is going to allow him to get cover sacks. And then if you look inside, he'll have a little bit more one-on-ones because from what I saw from Javon Kinlaw, when he's healthy, he's actually making a presence in the pass rush game. So he actually was pushing the pocket, actually forcing Trey Lance outside. If Nick Bosa's there outside where Trey Lance is rolling, it's an easy sack. Like he's it's over, right? Like so
Yeah.
for me, I'm gonna go. I wouldn't be shocked if Nick Bosa gets around 20 because the other end on the defensive line is better. You have Kimoko Toure, you have Drake Jackson rushing the passer, Charles Omenihu, Samson Ebukam. So those guys on the outside of Bosa are pretty damn good as well. Like they're pretty solid starters. So I would not be shocked if he hits 17 to 20 range. And from what I saw from him, he didn't practice, but he's over there just stretching, walking around, and you can see the dude's freaking abs from the stands. That's the first thing my fiance noticed. She looked at me, and I looked. I was already recording his abs, like to send to people. Like it was ridiculous, and like so it's just outrageous.
Yeah, yeah. Your girlfriend's like, huh? Or fiance. Oh shit. Is this okay to look at? Yeah, the guy's a freak athlete, man. He's not only that, but his quads are just insane. Like the guy's built like the Hulk, man. It's ridiculous. It really is ridiculous.
I think that's also a credit. I think people forget this dude works. Like, I mean, all NFL players were these guys. You saw a picture of the linebacking core. Every team's got that. Like they got their whole unit, and they got their. I mean, they look Bosa like that dude takes care of himself, man, like relentlessly. And I think that, what I'm saying is when I bet the under, I'm not saying that I'm betting him to have a substandard year. I'm just saying, like, I think he'll continue to improve upon what he's been. And if he's healthy, it's this if he's healthy all 17 games, I don't know. And Travarius Ward is healthy also. And Fred Warner.
A sack a game.
I'm telling you guys, here's the whole. Like I said, what happens if you've got maybe the best defensive line in the game, maybe the best linebacking core in the game? Right. Travarius Ward comes in and has a Pro Bowl level season. How is that not a top 2 defense? And then, so that's actually what I'm getting more excited about right now. I'm geek for Lance in the offense, but I believe in this defense.
It sounds like this defense will be top 3 and they're not going to be third. Like, let's just put it
or
that
2.
Way. Or 2. They really could. I mean, this might be one of the better defenses the 49ers have ever had potentially. I mean, we'll see how it plays out, but it should be a really good one. The secondary is absolutely stacked. We already know that the linebacking core is arguably the best in the league, and the defensive line's right up there as well. So it's going to be nuts for sure. Let's get into Friday from a different perspective, though. So not just Trey Lance, but everybody. Just what are we looking forward to seeing in general on Friday? Marco, I'll start with you on this one.
So there's a couple things I'm looking for. I want to see the run game. I want to see that get going early and often, right? Especially if Trey Lance is playing. So on, was it Saturday or Sunday? I have to double check, but I'm pretty sure one of the days I ended up talking to Rohan about it. I was like, I don't like how Kyle's calling plays for Trey Lance. I get it's just training camp, but he started off team period with like 3 straight passes or 2 straight passes, and then Nate Sudfeld comes in and he gives him like 3 or 4 run plays, and then he gives him a pass play. An easy completion is like, what are we doing here? Why aren't you doing that with Trey Lance too? Like that's kind of quarterback you got to get in like a comfortable rhythm, comfortable tempo kind of offense. And to me, he didn't do so. So I want to see the run game get going. I would like to see Trey Sermon show up and show out. That's something I really want to see because a lot of people were counting him out. And from what I saw from training camp, he's going to show up. And on the defense side of the ball, I hope Javon Kinlaw gets to play. I don't know if he's going to play because I want everyone to see him play. He looks like just insanely in shape. Like I don't understand how this dude could be that big and that athletic. It's ridiculous. So I want to see him do well. I do want to see the cornerback battle, right? Because there's a battle for the cornerback position, right? So running with the 2 is Lenore. He'll probably start with the 1s if they let the 1s go. So he'll probably end up even starting no matter what. Who's going to be opposite of him? It might be Kadar Coleman. It might be Ambry Thomas. Who's that going to be? That's what I'm looking for. Also, I want to see the slot. They're probably going to start Denard, but I think Samuel Womack should be starting by the time week 1 rolls around. So I'm looking forward to seeing the cornerback battle and pretty much Trey Sermon. I want to see what he does. How decisive does he look, and how explosive does he look against another team?
Yeah, absolutely. What about you, David?
Yeah, Marco took the words out of my mouth about the secondary with E-Man out with a strain. And like I said, if it's a minor, if they said he's going to be back next week, tells me it's probably just a grade a low grade. Like, and even then though, it just, the hamstrings are not to be screwed with. So I'd rather just see him. Honestly, I don't want to see him doing a lot of reps in preseason, but that's where I'm looking. I'm going to be watching that side of the ball, and with Womack coming in, in the slot, seeing what they're doing with that, Denard. I want to see how that transpires. I don't care about the starters in the linebacking core. I know how Charvarius Ward is playing. I'm not really worried about that either. On the defensive line, I'm not worried about your Bosa's. I'd love to see Kinlaw play out. I don't know if he'll see how much reps they give him. I'm probably going to be on a pitch count. I almost doubting that he goes. But I would say that I want to go look at Drake Jackson, the second round pick. You heard some mixed reviews, a lot of positives. He was always a guy that was coming in for his pass rushing chops. And I'm not saying it's in a clone mode of D Ford or anything like that, but I will like to see him. Is he going to be in all three downs? How does he look like against the run? That's where, and then of course the offensive line. I'm doubting Trent Williams. Marco maybe has some information that I don't, but I don't see it. Again, my philosophy is I don't think they should play. I don't think you play the best player in the NFL in a game that doesn't matter. And that gives us a lot of opportunity to see who they play. So I hope the Packers do play their starters on defense. I want to see some of these guys that are replacements for the perennial all pros. I want to see how they do against, all pro level players. That's where I'm looking for.
Yeah, absolutely. You guys didn't leave me much, I got to be honest, but there is one that you guys didn't cover, and I'll talk about that in a second. But I agree with you. The secondary for one is like A1. And it's not the starters. We already know that. It's everybody else behind. I mean, Ambry Thomas, we've heard not many good things come out of camp about him. They went and got Castro Fields and Womack, and there's just so many options out there. We know Lenore is still sitting there, and John, I mean, there's a ton of players, right? And so how are they going to figure that out? How are they going to cut it down? Is there a surprise cut from one of these guys that you would just assume going into things that would make the team? Somebody like, I don't know, Castro Fields or something like that. I don't know. We'll see. So I want to see how that plays out. Obviously the offensive line, but if the starters do go, I'm curious to see what they do between Jennings and Ray McLeod, because Jennings has had a rough camp up until today. It sounds like a lot of drops, not very sure-handed, which is not something you really see from him. I mean, he's a guy that you can rely on in third down situations. I'm curious to see what they do there. Is there really some sort of battle going on between those guys? Or is it Jennings' job no matter what? Like, what do they do? So for me, those are the things that I'll be looking for. And I'm going to echo what you said as well, and what Jamal's talking about here with the running back position. I mean, somebody really good is not making this team. And who's it going to be, right? You would like to think that a third-round pick from last year and Trey Sermon's going to make the team. I know he's a guy that I've been excited about watching all offseason, rooting for this kid, but who knows? Like, what is going to happen with that position? I don't know, man. It's going to be fun to watch, but there's a lot to look for.
And people forget
about more than just Trey Lance.
People forget about Jeff Wilson too.
I think he's the odd man out.
I probably is, right? And it's like, and at the same time, I really feel like I can't even remember who I had an argument with about this, but like by and large, when he's been asked and called upon, Jeff Wilson is a guy who's basically RB4, right? Almost, and a lot of maybe RB5. Like, he's a guy that's been able to come in Shanahan's system, and I think play very admirably for who he is as a UDFA that was never expected to be a guy that got lots of reps. So there's the question. I mean, I shouldn't. It's your show, Jesse, but I like Jamal.
No, answer it. Answer it. It's a great question.
To of any position, or
any position. Yep.
Boy, I'm gonna let Marco take this and let me think about it for a while. You've been at camp a little bit here, so I'm gonna. But I've got some ideas. I want to hear what Marco has to say, though. I won't steal his. I promise.
I mean, there's an argument for Ambry Thomas to be cut. Realistically, like there really is, but how often do teams give up on a third round pick? in year 2. You hardly see it. So I think he's going to make that because of roster politics, right? When you draft a third-round player, you tend to keep him a little bit longer. For example, the 49ers going to give up on Ahkello Witherspoon pretty soon. This regime drafted a corner like that in the 3rd round. They ended up keeping him for a little while until his end of his 4th year. They let him walk. But the surprise cut, I really do think is going to be Jeff Wilson Jr. The reason I do believe so is because Jordan Mason, he has shown he could run the ball pretty damn well. And something Kyle really loves about his running backs, he likes having team control for the next 6 years, 4 to 6 years. Whether he's on a 3-year deal, he ends up being controllable for 5 years roughly. And most of the time, when you're a backup running back like that, you're tendered, you're offered the very least minimum. And these running backs like to stay around because they know that they're going to be able to get the run in a very running back friendly system. So I wouldn't be shocked if Jordan Mason makes it and Jeff Wilson's odd man out. And there's going to be a surprise cut on the D line. There's a bunch of good guys on the D line who probably won't make it. There's at least 1 or 2 that won't make it. So you could go anywhere with this team realistically, and you could say any player on this roster, and it could be a surprise cut because this roster is that deep.
Is this the last question of the night?
Yeah. Let's end on this one. I think it's a good one to end on.
I think that you're looking at the most important position in the NFL at quarterback, and I haven't heard a lot of great things about Brock Purdy, but I think he might show that he's got what it takes to get on that practice squad. And I think the surprise cut that you see is everybody's hometown boy, Jimmy Garoppolo. I think that when the cards fall, as they may, that you're going to see a guy who took care of that shoulder. His agent Don Yee really worked overtime for him, and get a lot of guys carrying water, and he's going to find that the team that he wants to play for doesn't necessarily want to trade for him. And the 49ers are going to hold out, and then it's going to surprise everybody. And I'll somehow, some way, we will all make it. But what I'm really going to be disappointed about is the great Rita Oak. Now, she went on Twitter today and was asking for more suggestions. I have still not got a Goonies reference. I would like to see Jimmy doing the truffle shuffle. I would like to see, and so the longer this goes out, the more Rita Oak art that we get, and that's my surprise cut.
I mean, shocker! I cannot believe that that's the route that you went there, David.
Wow. I can't believe it is either, and I'm probably going to lose some sleep tonight.
Yeah, I know. I get it. The question is if Jimmy doesn't get traded and he gets cut, does she have to draw those pictures forever? Because I think she specifically said traded. Just throwing that out there.
Oh, I did not.
Yeah, she did. She did. So I'm going to hold her to it.
So then, if he's never traded from any team that he ever joins, she's stuck doing art. I don't think she realized. Like we all thought. So that's the surprise, and maybe that's the gift that keeps on giving. Is that Jimmy's gone, but we still get Rita Oak art, no matter if he's a Giant, a Brown, he's got a Seahawk. We'll see what happens.
I think I might ask you. You guys remember that picture I sent you guys the other day when I was down south in LA when I took a picture with Jimmy? I think I'm gonna ask her to draw that picture for me because I really like that picture. You guys are really sleeping. No, realistically, you guys are really sleeping on Jimmy Garoppolo. I texted you guys earlier. Right before the show, that's quarterback 1, and you're not going to disrespect him on Jessie's show. 1, so let me tell you right now, David, don't ever do that to Jimmy Garoppolo ever again. All right, when you're that handsome, you're not going to get cut from this roster. All right, you're the best looking dude in the Bay Area, and you're going to disrespect him. That's a $26 million quarterback. On Jessie's show, you will not disrespect him. You understand that, right? I do not let that fly.
I honestly, brother, I know that's your boy. You know what? Hey, I'm
disrespectful. Disrespectful.
No, it is. And I know that I've struck a nerve, and I consider you a friend. And so, and somebody I trust, I apologize. But real talk, like I don't want to lose Rita Oak, Jimmy art. So please Please be the surprise
I
cut.
think we found the loophole. I'm just throwing it out there. So that's what I would go. I
Can
would
we
tweet
talk
at
to
her. For that
Kyle?
one.
Can we say like Jimmy gets what he wants? We get Rita Oak art. Can we? I honestly think like we deserve that. And she doesn't. She shouldn't have to keep producing art unless she's,
I mean, she's made a living with these Jimmy. Dude,
She
these
really
are
has,
amazing.
yeah.
They're amazing pictures. Like she's drawing amazing. Like I wish I could draw like that. Phenomenal.
I've got 3 hoodies waiting for me in the mail. My neighbors have been picking up my stuff at the PO box. I can't wait. I'm going to be wearing Rita Oak hoodies at the Niners game at Christmas Eve, man. It's going to be wonderful.
I love it. I love it. Guys, thank you so much for joining me. This was a fantastic show. I really appreciate you guys jumping in last minute to help me with this thing. David, you can follow him at Backcountry Fam. Should be Farm, but Fam. He also writes for SI a little bit. You're going to see a lot coming from him. Does some amazing work over there. Marco, that's his Twitter handle right there, Marco Mart 1205. But he's also on the
49ers Red Zone podcast. You can find us any audio platform you guys prefer. We're also on YouTube. 49ers Red Zone podcast. Go ahead and subscribe there. It's ran by me and my boy Rohan, who does phenomenal work for 49ers Web Zone. So that's where you guys can find me.
All right. And if you are here and you have not subscribed for any reason, first of all, shame on you. But second of all, you can help us make that push for 6K. We're just over 100 away. So if you could just hit that subscribe for us, show us some love, I would appreciate it. And until tomorrow, peace.